Hey guys, welcome back. I hope you are having an amazing day. Let's get right into the stories. The first one is a pro-revenge story. The title says it all, but you'll be surprised by the twist. When I, Sophia 30, was in elementary school, there was a girl who bullied me relentlessly. I'll call her Amara, since that's about the only kindness I can show her. It all started in second grade. Amara was the instant queen bee because she had spent her early years in Senegal. Born there, her family immigrated to the US when she was 5, and I thought that was super fascinating because the only immigrants I knew at the time were from Mexico, like my own family, an important detail. We lived in Arizona, so Spanish was common, but Amara's background seemed exotic. I asked her about life in Africa, and she sneered, "Way better than Mexico, that's for sure." Odd, I thought, but kids say weird things. As the year went on, her subtle digs about me being Mexican only escalated. By third grade, we learned about racism and its ugly history. Watching a cartoon on the civil rights movement, I was appalled by the injustice of peaceful protesters being arrested. That's when Amara shot me a look and spat. "A little wetback like you wouldn't get it." I was horrified to have that vile slur hurled at me in class. When I pleaded with the teacher, she just shrugged. "It's just words, Sophia. Sticks and stones." I ran home in tears, telling my mom, who assured me Amara probably didn't grasp how hateful that term was. Boy, was she wrong. Over the next few years, the racial insults only intensified. Beaner brain, fence jumper, you name it. I begged her to stop. I went to teachers weeping for help, but nobody did a thing. Beyond the slurs, she'd mock my looks, my weight, everything. In 5th grade, with my dad's alcoholism making our home life tough, Amara pounced on the smoky stench that clung to my clothes, joking that she needed a gas mask around me. Rumors spread that I was frighteningly unhygienic. When my beloved grandpa passed in 6th grade, leaving me gutted, Amara pretended to offer condolences only to snarl, "It's too bad he didn't live long enough to see what an ugly disappointment his granddaughter turned out to be." I dissolved into sobs as her crew cackled. The one time a teacher dared intervene, Amara wailed, "It's because I'm black, isn't it?" And they backed off immediately. So how did she ruin my life? Well, I used to love drawing anime characters for escape. One day I spent hours meticulously illustrating the Sailor Moon crew, only to return from the bathroom and find my work defaced. Ugly slurs like Beaner, scrawled in permanent marker. Amara and her friends pointed and laughed at me, crying over the ruined picture. When I yelled at her to tell me why she hated me so much, the principal made me apologize for yelling at a classmate over some dumb drawing. After that, Amara knew she could taunt me with impunity. I fell into depression, developing a deep self-loathing toward my Mexican roots and indigenous features. My sunny personality turned sullen and defensive as a depressed teen. Drawing, my one creative outlet, became a trauma I could barely approach without agonizing flashbacks. Therapy helped me slowly unpack Amara's torment and rebuild my self-esteem. My family enveloped me with affection, surrounding me with stories about our proud heritage. I delved into my Tohono O'odham tribal roots to reclaim that side of my identity too. Though we attended the same high school, I dodged Amara, who styled herself as a paragon of racial unity. She'd wax poetic about equality at assemblies, and I had to choke back laughter at the sheer hypocrisy. In 2024, while packing for Amava, I got a notification from Amara about an upcoming elementary school demolition and reunion, a chance to say goodbye to our beloved alma mater. Part of me wanted to decline, sick at the thought of that wretched place, but another part smelled an opportunity to finally expose Amara's bigotry all those years ago. So at dinner, I asked Mom if she remembered that racist girl, the one she'd battled the school over constantly. Gripping her fork, she seethed, "How could I forget that little idiot?" Turns out, Mom had documentary evidence. Her contemporaneous notes, copies of the hateful messages Amara used to send, even my defaced Sailor Moon drawing that triggered such panic attacks. Poring over them, the old hurt resurfaced like a gut punch. But I also had ammunition. There were notes from the principal himself acknowledging Amara's nasty, ethnically biased behavior toward me. Proof that they knew and did nothing. I printed it all out, ready to detonate Amara's decades-long charade at the reunion. It was a playground barbecue, and I arrived to hugs from old classmates. While some looked worn down by kids and careers, I appeared fresh-faced. An equal rights group was there too, eager to hear Amara's speech about inclusivity. Ugh! When my turn came, I reminisced about starting elementary, how eager I felt to grow and learn. Then I outlined the nightmare Amara put me through, how she crippled me with racist vitriol that my own mother spent thousands on therapy for me to overcome. I revealed what an inspiring example of the American dream she'd been, mocking her snobbish catchphrase from grade school. I strode away, leaving a stunned silence. As the final gut punch, I anonymously sent all Mom's documentation to the rights group Amara belonged to, letting them see her true colors. Amara was swiftly fired, dumped by her fiancé, and disowned by her parents, who claimed they knew nothing of her bullying. Shocker. The school district apologized and revoked an award they'd given my sadistic old principal. Many classmates felt I went too far in dredging up ancient history, but I was finally ready to close that chapter and move on, knowing her facade was stripped away. Mom stayed neutral, recognizing she did everything possible to protect me back then. After relocating, Amara tried pleading for my forgiveness, but I blocked her. I still wonder what made someone from such a vibrant, welcoming culture like Senegal's breed such toxic hatred toward me, someone who'd admired her roots. But mostly, I'm relieved to have reclaimed the pride in my Mexican and indigenous identity that Amara tried so hard to batter out of me. I'm drawing again, slowly, savoring the creative release. The words she weaponized don't trigger panic anymore, just pity for her bigotry. I know my worth. My racist bully's vile harvest is bitterness and ruin. But I'm blooming. The next one is an entitled people story. Buying your first home is supposed to be an exciting milestone. For me, it quickly turned into a nightmare when I discovered my new neighbor had built her house partially on my property. I couldn't believe it. This woman had the audacity to encroach on my land without permission and construct a house that crossed over the property line. When I first bought the place, I was thrilled. It was a cute little cottage on a decent-sized lot out in the country, surrounded by nature. The neighborhood was quiet, and the neighbors seemed friendly enough. Or so I thought. On my first day moving in, I was unloading boxes from the truck when a chipper voice called out, "Hello there! Welcome to the neighborhood!" I turned to see a woman who looked to be in her mid-40s walking towards me. She introduced herself as Nancy and said she lived in the house next door. We chatted briefly about how she had lived there for 12 years and hoped I would enjoy it as much as she did. Nancy seemed nice enough, if not a little nosy, so I didn't think much of our encounter. Over the next few weeks, I was consumed with unpacking and setting up my new home. It wasn't until about a month later that I finally had time to survey my property and consider potential landscaping projects. As I walked along the edges, marking out a potential garden space, I noticed something odd. Nancy's house, which I originally thought was a respectable distance from the property line, was actually partially sitting on my land. My lot was a standard 100x 150 feet, but a good 15 feet of her home encroached onto my property. I was absolutely floored. How could she have made such a huge mistake building her home? Surely she would have had the land surveyed before constructing a house. I headed straight for Nancy's front door, trying hard to bite my tongue until I heard her explanation. She answered with her usual wide smile and cheery demeanor, as if she hadn't trespassed on my property at all. As politely as I could, I pointed out the encroachment and asked how on earth this had happened. "Oh, that," Nancy laughed with a dismissive wave of her hand. "When I bought this place 12 years ago, I wanted more space so I could have a bigger garden. The land survey must have been wrong, because I just expanded in that direction without thinking." My mouth nearly hit the floor. This woman knowingly built part of her house onto my land without permits, proper surveys, or even a second thought. I told her this was completely unacceptable and illegal. Nancy just shrugged, saying it was no big deal, and she was sure we could come to some arrangement. I, on the other hand, was seeing red. I informed Nancy in no uncertain terms that I would be consulting my lawyer about this, and she had better prepare herself. Stomping back to my house, I immediately got on the phone with my real estate attorney. She was just as shocked as I was by Nancy's audacity and complete disregard for property lines. My lawyer said I had an airtight case to sue for adverse possession and demand the removal of her encroaching home. Over the next few weeks, my lawyer sent official notices informing Nancy she was illegally occupying my land. We tried to give her a chance to rectify the situation on her own by removing that portion of the house. But Nancy steadfastly refused, insisting again that we could just work something out. I'll admit, part of me wondered if it was worth the hassle to sue my neighbor over this, but it was the principle of the matter. She knowingly stole my land to expand her own property. If I didn't stand my ground now, who knows what other incursions she may try to get away with in the future. This woman needed to learn that her actions have consequences, so we filed a lawsuit against Nancy for encroachment, adverse possession, and trespassing. As we gathered evidence about the build and permits, I learned she hadn't even pulled proper permits in the first place. It turned out Nancy's husband was a contractor who just built the extension on a verbal agreement with the previous owner without legal oversight or updated surveys. In court, Nancy was indignant, acting like she was the injured party here. She once again tried to insist this was all a misunderstanding and that I was clearly overreacting. The judge was not sympathetic. In the end, she had no choice but to comply with removing the portion of her house that crossed into my property. The judge granted us 30 days to demolish and remove the encroaching structure, since Nancy refused to do so herself. In the end, it cost her thousands more in demolition and repair fees than if she had just agreed to rectify the issue in the first place. But hopefully it taught her an important lesson she won't forget. As the backhoe rolled in and began tearing down that side of Nancy's house, I'll admit it felt pretty satisfying. Sure, it was an eyesore in my backyard for a little while, but getting to witness her face as she watched a huge chunk of her home get demolished made all the hassle worth it. Nancy shot dirty looks my way during the whole process, obviously bitter about the huge loss she was taking. Too bad for her. She should have thought about that before trespassing on my property and building without permission. The law is there to protect people's land rights, and I was not about to let her walk all over mine. In the end, I got exactly what I was legally owed. Every single inch of my land back under my control. Nancy had to downsize to a much smaller home after her ignorant attempt at expansion failed spectacularly. This experience taught me that you have to stand up for yourself, even when it's inconvenient or seems petty. Because if you give an inch, people like Nancy will take a mile. I may have lost weeks of my time and a good chunk of money on legal fees, but it was a hard-learned lesson about protecting my rights as a homeowner. Now my backyard has a clear property line that Nancy definitely understands. Anytime I'm out gardening or enjoying my land, I see her scowling from her tiny home that's no longer illegally invading my space. Let's just say I'm extra motivated to start some landscaping projects that may irk Nancy, given how much she cost me. Payback can be satisfying indeed. The moral? Don't build on land that doesn't belong to you, folks. You never know when that owner will stand up and demand what's legally theirs. The next one is a petty revenge story. So at my old job, where I was a secretary at a country club, this lady came up to the service desk. She was clearly pissed about something before she spoke, so I braced myself. She said she had opened up a new bank account and closed the other, so she needed to give us the updated bank account info. I look her up in our system and see she is 3 months late on the automatic withdrawal payments, and so had 3 months of late fees. I told her and she lost her mind. She screamed so loud, all eyes in the lobby were on us, with everyone looking at her in either shock, amusement, or disgust. The late fees amounted to $450, and she demanded they be removed. Now, if she had simply asked nicely, I would have told her I can ask my manager if the fees could be removed. But instead, she called me an idiot and an idiot multiple times, and called me a thief, insisting I was making up the late fees so I could pocket her money. whining about how she would need to wait a week to buy some purse if she paid it now. So after she calmed down a little, I told her I'll start the process to remove the fees and started typing really fast and loud. In reality, I did a series of free typing tests online. 85 words per minute was my top score. Not too bad, huh? 5 minutes go by, 10 minutes, 15, 20. At the 30-minute mark, she yells, "Forget it," and hands me her debit card to pay the fees. The next one is a malicious compliance story. This incident occurred a couple of summers ago at the discount shop where employees wear red, and you can always find us in the middle of nowhere or a rundown strip mall. I was the only assistant manager on staff because we were always short-staffed. Our system was updated, and eventually, assistant managers couldn't print off applications for our incapable general managers. I was bouncing between setting up our display of summer decor. I'd opened the box with our cement garden birds, the really fat ones everyone has, and it was evident from the crushed cardboard that our driver had crushed them during the delivery. I put them up on the shelf and threw away the demolished pieces. As the assistant manager, I have sales floor privileges to use markdown stickers for damaged items to adopt these rescues to a loving gardener. And begin scene. Our cast. Me, Rob, rude old lady. I left my flock of injured rescue cement fat birds to go get the discount stickers, and before I ever get a chance to reprice them for the markdown, in stomps, Rob, these birds are all broken. I was looking at the garden stuff, and they are all broken. It's ridiculous you expect me to pay, I think it was $5, when this is the best-looking one, and his head is broken. And 5 small green chips. She literally could have fixed with school supplies were missing, on the very top of his chubby head. She kept babbling for a little longer about how we are crooks and scammers for charging such a ridiculous price for a clearly defective product. I waited for the iconic, "So what are you going to do about it?" and thrust the bird at me. Kind of offended she said so many mean things to a bird with a bad haircut, when a summer before that I sold an alligator to a good home missing a whole front foot. Well, it's not his fault this happened. Our delivery drivers are very rushed people who are not gentle. Rob, I don't care whose fault it is. I want to know what you are going to do to fix it. Cue malicious compliance. I suddenly remember how she was at one point scolding me because she doesn't even want the bird. He will make her garden ugly. She's only getting it because she feels owed a discount for seeing a broken bird without a discount sticker. Well, I'll make sure he gets a good home because you said you don't want him since he's broken, right, ma'am? Rob, suddenly very confused and getting flustered. No, I want to buy him. I just want to know what you are going to do to make it right with me about this bird. Right, and you said he'd make your garden ugly, so I should sell him to someone with an ugly garden that will think he is pretty. Rob Yahinesta growls and walks away. The next one is an entitled People story. Whoa boy, I had no idea people could be this unaware. My spouse's childhood friend announced a year ago that they were coming to our country and intended to stay with us. We tentatively said, okay. Recently, we found out that my mother requires a significant medical procedure, will be hospitalized for a few days to a week, and recovering with us after. The 3 of us live together as roommates with bills split equally, essentially. This procedure falls smack dab into the middle of my spouse's friend's trip. I told my spouse to tell their friend about the circumstances and that this would severely impact any sightseeing plans we had, and I would be out for the duration of the trip between work and taking care of my mom. My spouse's friend, despite driving for many years in their home country, did not want to drive while here and expected us to ferry them around. I had hoped that, like most normal people, the friend would pick up on the fact that this is not a good time to visit us and make alternate arrangements, i.e., drive a car, but instead they said, well, as long as I get to see X while here, I'm fine. I should probably explain that my spouse is a very new driver and just got their license a month ago and has little experience driving freeways. They are terrified of these. I do most of the driving as a result while they are getting comfortable. Said friend arrived on Monday and since then, expected to be picked up from the airport, a 2-hour drive each way. And my spouse, the new driver, had to drive in horrific traffic to get them. I was busy with appointments for my mom and work. Did not offer gas money to my spouse for driving all that way to get them. Expects to be driven to sightsee each day, again, never offers gas money or pays for anything. When in our house, has the TV up loud in the one room I enjoy hanging out in, outside of our bedroom. Doesn't pick up after themselves, has not offered to pay for a single meal. Does not even pay for their own meals or drinks, save for one meal, so now we're paying to feed another adult. Should also mention that this friend has money, so it is not even a case of not having money. When taken to sightsee, never says thank you, and even complained about one place my spouse took them to. Takes long showers without even asking if we need the bathroom before. Does not offer to help with anything in the house, refuses to arrange for their own sightseeing, and is entirely dependent on my spouse, who I'd like to have around to support me during this stressful time, but do not want to be around the friend, so therefore I don't get my spouse. Lectures my spouse on the politics and social norms of our country, despite the fact that my spouse has lived here for 4 years and knows more than said friend does. Friend is a total social drain to be around and only wants to talk about themselves and their thoughts, chew complaints. Friend has not once said thank you to us for hosting or driving or paying for their meals. Friend is staying for 13 days total, all with us, all with the expectation of us driving them. I have social anxiety. Spouse knows this, and have had to give up my 2 favorite spaces in the whole house so the friend has a place to sleep and a place to hang out when they're not in the bedroom. I work from home and had to relocate my work setup, previously in the guest room, to another part of the house, which was, and is, a major inconvenience, as work is crazy right now, and I'm having to balance taking care of my mom with that. The last 6 days have been hell, and I feel like I have no peace in my own home, especially after a long day of having to be social while working and then having to continue that because of this house guest. The next 6 days will also be hell, as this friend simply will not take a hint, and I've got the stress of dealing with my parent who is having a procedure that has a 10% fatality rate, and given her health conditions, complications could happen. Of course, knowing this friend, they probably would not take a hint then either, and would probably still expect my spouse to drive them places. As it is, my spouse asked if they and the friend should come up to the hospital to visit my mom, to which I said my spouse should, but not if the friend is going to be clinging to them like a sad puppy. I have talked to my spouse, and they agree that the friend is a drain. They're not happy either, but they are trying to stick it out until the friend leaves, and have already said the friend will not be allowed to stay here again. It is clear to me that the friend is massively taking advantage of my spouse, and I hate to see it. I'm just flabbergasted that people like this even exist, as every other house guest we've ever had has been considerate, occupies themselves, arranges for their own transportation, and genuinely seems to care about our lives as we care about theirs. This friend is one of the most entitled people I've ever had the displeasure of meeting. Thank you for watching. I would really appreciate it if you could like the video and subscribe to our channel if you haven't already. We'll see you again tomorrow.